From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Yeah, by Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Studying Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have Zachery Mimbs with me, and we're going to talk about what it takes to be a social media manager. Grab a drink, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Hey, everybody. Studying Digital Marketing is your digital concierge. We help you put the pieces together to make your marketing success. Specialties we have including WordPress design and development, WordPress security, which is one of our most popular offerings, ads, and more. So if you want to succeed in the digital world, go on over to studyingdigitalmarketing.com and have a look at what we offer, and we'd be glad to help you. And let's jump on a call and make it happening. That's studyingdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And in today's podcast, I got my good friend Zachery with me, and we're going to talk all about being a social media manager. Hey, Zach, how are you today, my friend?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me today, Rob.
Yeah,
I'm glad we could set this up.
Yeah, it's taken us a little bit of finagling. Let me see, vacation, sickness, a few other things, right? Life. It's been one of those months, I think. I should tell you, the Toronto area is, I'm just looking out the window, it's cloudy and rainy today. So welcome to fall in Toronto. So there you go.
Yeah, it's very, very sunny here, but I like the rainy weather. It's nice when I'm working.
I'm sure. So before we jump into being a social media manager, did you get involved in doing it? It's always interesting to hear why people ended up doing stuff. So how'd you end up there?
So it started about 10 years ago when I was in college. I've always been passionate about building relationships with people and content creation. So I was in a student life club called CAB, and they do all the events on campus like spring fling and all that stuff. And so the lady in charge of it, her name was Cheryl. So she thought I was doing a great job, and she pulled me aside one day and she wanted me to take over, and she wanted me to start getting paid for what I was doing. So I took over, and that naturally came with the social media handles. So for me, I started posting on the Facebook and the Twitter, and I really loved those two aspects of it.
Yep.
So when I finished college, I went into freelance, which is, I feel like that's what everybody tells you not to do. And then I did social media for a candy company for 6 years called Nancy's Candy and Spice in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And then my relationship ended with her in 2022. And then I met the great Stephanie Hudson, and I worked with her marketing agency called Sweet Tea in 2022. And I kind of you know how they always say, like, if you do good work, more work will come to you.
Yep. No question.
That's how I started working with Andrew and Bertha AI. And then eventually Vito noticed my work with Bertha AI because he's a co-founder. And Stephanie pulled me on a Zoom call one day and said, hey, Vito wants to talk to you about possibly doing social media for Adoram. And so that was extremely thrilling for me. So my first task with Adoram was helping with their summit in 2023. So that's kind of how I got into the business. I absolutely love doing it. They always say, like, do what you're passionate about. I'm extremely passionate about social media. I've met so many people, including you, Andrew, Stephanie, Vito, and a lot of great people in the focus group as well.
Yeah, and I should add, disclaimer, those three, not why I had you on, but those three are all good friends of mine. Andrew's been on the show, 3 or 4 times, Steph as well, Vito as well, and I know them all pretty well. I've been involved, as you know, in the summit a couple of times, so it's that is a great event, and I'm sure Vito and Andrew and Stephanie are gearing up for another one. I would expect any time now. Like,
We're doing it again in 2025, so I'm very excited about that. I think Stephanie, Andrew, and Vito are all three going to host again as well.
yep, yep. They've all hosted it the last couple of years. They kind of rotated around.
Hmm.
Um, so let's jump in. As somebody running social media, it's changed a lot. And I think the hardest one right now is Facebook or Facebook/Instagram/ whatever Meta owns. I think the
Hmm.
thing that drives people like you and people like me absolutely insane is the ever-changing rules. How do you navigate that?
Gosh, so I subscribe to different social media newsletters, and I try myself to keep people updated. Like I'm
Yep.
sure you've seen my posts on Twitter and LinkedIn. It's constantly changing. It can be frustrating. The algorithm can change on a dime.
Hmm.
And a lot of the times the different companies, Facebook, Meta, Twitter, they don't announce these beforehand. You just kind of have to figure it out. I always tell people social media is not an overnight thing. It's constant trial and error, seeing what works and getting the algorithm in your favor. So
Yep.
one thing I'm big on is there are no shortcuts with social media. You've got to do things the right way. You've got to play by the rules because that's what the algorithm likes. And
Yep.
if you don't, the algorithm is going to suppress your content. So for me, how do I keep up with it? I just actively try to seek information, and I'm constantly on social media, both personally for my job and just browsing. So it's kind of a joke, like I'll be on TikTok looking at content on my free time, but that's technically still work.
Hmm.
So it's just funny, like in my line of work, you never truly leave your job at the end of the day. But
Yeah,
like I'm
I would agree with you. That's an interesting one. Uh, because they've come a riot the U.S. government more than once, depending on who's in power and who's running the show. I don't
Mhm.
know if you know, but TikTok was forced to close their Canadian office by the Canadian government. The service hasn't been banned, but any of their office staff, they basically kicked them out and said, "You're closing it. That's the end of that."
Mhm.
Um, TikTok, correct me if I'm wrong, they're owned by ByteDance, correct? If I recall, which
Yes.
is which is 50% owned by the Chinese government, which is kind of the problem there.
It's
Do
actually about
you
to
have any
be banned.
take on that?
It's about to be banned in the US too. So as a social media manager, I've also got to navigate that.
Yeah.
Um, so I have Adoram on TikTok, and I've got my
Mhm.
own TikTok as well. There's a new app that's powered by TikTok that everything's going to move to called Lemon 8.
Mhm.
I haven't actually looked too much into what that is, but all your TikTok stuff is going to move over to that app. So it's not really, it's crazy because they're banning it, but it's not really going away. It's just changing form.
Yep.
Um,
Mm.
so it's kind of scary to me, work-wise to see an app banned. I understand why they're doing it.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. It's quite scary.
Yep.
But is it because so I know it's owned by the Chinese. Um, are I'm assuming the other social media companies are owned in the US. I haven't looked too much into that.
Most of them are Facebook, Instagram, Meta is certainly US based, Google's US based. So that
I think
covers like YouTube and stuff like that.
I think what's been a problem in the past is Facebook, or I should probably say Meta because that includes a whole bunch of stuff. Also includes all kind of data on
Mhm.
us, but
You got regulatory problem in social right now. There's the mess with ByteDance and TikTok. There's the stuff going on with Google. There's a big frame in the EU right now to break Google up. Who knows what's going to come out of that one? You got the issues with Meta having control of Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. What do you think about all this regulatory stuff?
um, um, it, it's certainly scary. And I think that's the nature of social media is things are constantly changing. And kind of like how we were talking about a second ago, is you just gotta have a way to keep up with it. I
Yep.
definitely think there needs to be oversight somewhat because I think I had mentioned this before it cut out, but for example, Facebook has quite a bit of our data, but
Mhm.
and so does TikTok, but I think the difference is TikTok is in the hands of a foreign power.
Yep.
Um, so to me, it's just quite scary, you know what I mean?
I agree with you. Um, and then we got new platforms coming out. You've got Blue Sky, which you and I were talking about before we went restore. Now, Blue Sky's been around for a year and a bit, actually founded by Jack Dorsey, the same person who founded Twitter. You've got Mastodon, which is kind of the open Fediverse, which is one I've kind of stayed away from until recently. So I am on Blue Sky.
Mhm.
And you got some of that. What do you think about platforms like that?
I love to play around with new platforms. We had talked a little bit as well about Lemon 8, so I'm excited to kind of dive in to see what that's about. I'm going to dive into Blue Sky tonight as well. So part of being a social media manager is really immersing yourself into these different platforms.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Now, when you're managing social and you're managing a couple accounts, it gets kind of busy. Do you use a tool or do you just prefer to use native?
Yeah, I use Publer. So there's a misconception with social media that if you use like a third-party tool, it affects reach. I've done a
Mhm.
lot of research and testing into this, and I've talked to other social media managers about this as well, but it's actually not true. So you can use a third-party tool like Planable, Publer, Hootsuite, and all your content is going to perform just fine as long as it adds value.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I use a third-party tool. It's happened before years ago where I've accidentally posted content to the wrong account. That can happen. So it's very important to stay organized on that front. I love Publer. It's very affordable, very easy to use. It's actually one of the easiest to use um,
Yeah.
platforms out of all the ones I've tried.
Yeah, and Publer actually has a really good free plan if somebody just wants to get started and check out how it works. Like it's Hootsuite used to have a good one, and they've kind of shied away from that in the last number of years. So I think it's one of my favorite ones. The other tool that's out there is Buffer, which some people like, some people hate. I particularly don't care for it, but others
Mhm.
like it. So I think you have to choose one and stick with it. Um, and we talk about using a tool. The other thing we talk about is quantifying social media. So analytics matter. Which analytics do you like when you're quantifying social media?
To me, the most important thing is engagement because
Yep.
that tells you the most about how your content is performing. I actually saw a post in a social media group yesterday about how this girl has a lot of pressure from upper management to get X amount of followers on social media.
Mhm.
And this is kind of a hot take, but followers don't really matter.
Mhm.
Um,
I
and
would agree.
I'm gonna give you a scenario. Would you rather have 100 active followers or 1,000 that aren't really doing anything for you and your business?
Yep.
I'd rather have the 100. So
I would too.
sometimes there are situations like TikTok where you need 1,000 to open up more features, like the link in
Mhm.
bio. So in that instance, it kind of does matter. But in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. I think people fall into that trap quite a bit.
Yep.
The most important thing to me is engagement, 100%. But there's different goals with social media. Obviously, website traffic is a big one if you're trying to track that, but not everyone has that goal because there are different goals with social media. But for me, the number one is engagement because that's the biggest teller of how your content is
Mhm.
resonating with your audience.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Because if they're not engaging with you, you might as well have 50 million followers in a pond of water. Like honestly, that's I think if they're not going to engage, like at the end of the day, who cares? And I think that matters. I
Another
think,
trap, Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say another trap that a lot of companies fall into, or people not as familiar with social media fall into, is they think they've got to go on social media and sell, sell, sell. And that's not really how it works because people don't really want to get on their phone after work and be sold to.
Yeah.
So you've got to go on there and be educative. You've got to provide value. Um, so the way I put it, and other social media managers as well, is you've got to follow the the 80-20 rule. So you want to be 20% salesy and 80% everything else.
Yep. But I think that goes to any online marketing, to be honest with you, including newsletters and other things. I think it's, you want to be 80% everybody else and 20% salesy. And I think there's so many competitive products out there in the
Mm.
digital space that people choose who they buy from based on who they like, not always the features in the product. It's really interesting when you look at that.
Oh, that also leads me is to a fantastic point on authenticity on social
Yep.
media.
Yep.
So I think you've seen quite a bit of my posts on that. Like it really bothers me, for example, when I see too much AI on social media. Like I,
Hmm.
I was scrolling through TikTok last week, and instead of seeing a real person talking, I was seeing like an AI person, and it's really off-putting.
Yep.
I think AI generated alt text and captions is fine as long as you're going back through it. But to me, people don't want to follow brands on social media. They want to follow people. So
Yep.
you want to be authentic. And I think people often overthink the way that social media works. So they think everything has to be super polished. Um, and that's not really how it works either. I always tell people who are creating content, just pick up the camera and go. People want to see how your company operates. People love behind the scenes content, for example. That's some of the best performing content I've ever seen. Um, they just think it's really interesting, for example. So to me, I'm a big pivoter on being authentic on social media.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And the other thing is, if you're looking to polish it and you're looking for perfection, you're never going to get there anyway. So, it's funny. I was talking to a web client last, what's that? Today's Thursdays at this record. So it's on Tuesday night. And she said, I'm a really good writer and I'm worried about my content. And I said, well, here's the deal. If you don't hurry up and publish, you'll never get it done because you'll keep critiquing yourself. So I think that's a bad idea. I think you got to kind of look at, um, you know, let's just get it out there and then we can polish it later sometimes and just trying to make it 100%.
It kind of shows that exactly, and it shows that you're human too. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah. What's most popular content these days? Video, pictures, audio, or just text?
Video 100%, but it kind of depends on the platform. So
Hmm.
like it's funny so Twitter, for example, is really pushing video content right now. And
Yep.
TikTok is pushing picture more so right now, which you wouldn't think because they're a video platform, but they're launching a new Notes app soon, which isn't available in the US yet. So they need more content for that, so they're pushing photo content and carousels right now. So it really just depends on the platform that you're using. But
Hmm.
overall, I would say that video content is king. So for
Yep.
example, I started making video content for Adoram in February, which wasn't in my area of expertise, but I've gotten much better at it since February.
Hmm.
And I love doing it. So, to me, video is king, and I often tell people, like I said earlier, don't overthink it. Just pick up the camera and go.
Yep. I know we're talking live or taped and short or long.
These are short form content. That is the best performing content on social media right now.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
trying to get into more so some long form content with Adoram as well because we're trying to diversify quite a bit.
Yep. But I
Because
think I think I think
one
people want.
cool one cool thing you can do with long
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
I think I forgot what I was saying.
What I was going to say was, I think people want short content. They don't want to get into half-hour video content where they got to stare at a screen. We're already staring at screens enough. So I think that's why short rules. One reason why YouTube Shorts has done very well.
Mhm. To me, I find that a lot of long form content has too much fluff. I think you need to provide people with as much value
Yep.
in 1 minute as you possibly can.
So true.
So that's how I approach the content I'm doing for Adarim.
Have you ever now, if you're using Publer, you're to be fair, you're probably pre-scheduling your video, your posts a little bit. I would assume. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would assume Publer's a bit of a scheduling
Mhm.
tool. Have you ever
So
had
it
have, have you ever had to go into a post that you scheduled and pull it back and say today's not a good day with what's going on or other things, or I gotta hold this. So we were talking about video a little bit. I was just saying YouTube Shorts is a bit of a big deal. Have you had any good luck with YouTube Shorts with short stuff?
Yeah, so we started with TikTok for Adarim in February, and naturally that kind of moved into YouTube Shorts. And
Hmm.
it was kind of driving me crazy because content would perform well on TikTok, but bad on YouTube. And then some content would perform bad on YouTube, but great on TikTok. So you kind of have to navigate the different algorithms per se.
Yep.
But I started finding my footing quite a bit with the YouTube Shorts for sure. Um, the algorithm with YouTube seems to be a little bit nicer.
Yep. I would agree. Uh,
I would suspect because maybe there's not as many people there.
mhm. Yep. I would agree. And interesting enough, people are discounting YouTube. You got to remember, YouTube's like the second biggest search engine on the internet right now. Not Google's number one, and their other product, YouTube's number two, right? So,
Gosh, I remember in 2007 when YouTube was brand new. It's changed. It's just changed so much over the years.
yeah, it's funny because I have a YouTube account that was created before Google owned them, so you can tell based on what the account is named how legacy it is. So, I hear you on that one. Um, what is the biggest thing that companies make the mistake of when they're trying to do social media that you see?
I think focusing on the wrong things, and I think this ties back into what I was talking about earlier with followers. Like I was saying, followers don't really matter. You want to be focused on engagement. I think authenticity kind of ties into that as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you're out of touch with social media or you're new to it, people fall into the trap that things have to be overly polished and mm, not necessarily. I really like the point that you brought up where if you keep like working at something, you're never going to put it out. I think that was a great thing to bring up. I think I just think they're focusing on the wrong things per se.
I would agree. And sometimes I think where brands get into trouble is we've all heard about that big Fortune 500 that puts out a tweet and the tweet doesn't make sense at the time, or there's something going on in the world. And it's like, why didn't you pull that tweet back kind of thing? Like that happens like all the time, right? And, you know, I don't understand how big brands can be so tone deaf sometimes. Oh, well, we scheduled it a week ago. Well, pull the tweet back, pull the post back, do something. It's not worth your brand reputation at that point.
I always go back and read through what's on our content calendar a million times.
Yep.
Because like we do, because I think people schedule things out to save time, obviously, but you've
Hmm.
still got to be on the platforms as it's posting, engaging. Because you don't
That's
want to post and go, that's
no,
terrible.
I agree. And the other thing you have to do is you have to respond. So if somebody comments to a post, or comments to a video, respond to that. Be social, engage back. And I think a lot of brands treat social media the way they treat broadcast TV. Let's just flood the market and be done with it.
Mhm. I've been told for a past client, this was years and years and years ago, they said they wanted to post like hundreds of times a week, which A isn't really feasible from a work perspective, but then you're going to make the algorithm hate you. And their reasoning was, I want to get as much content out there as we possibly
Yep,
can. And that's just like such a bad way to approach social media, you know?
I agree. What would you say optimum? Say, take a platform like Twitter/X. What would be the optimum? Like 4 or 5 posts a day at the most, I would think.
I do like a two rule. So I
Okay.
don't ever do it. So one is like an engagementy type of post, and then the other one is like a core post. And the core post can either be value based or entertainment. I think 4 or 5 per day is a little too much per se, but there are instances where there's a lot going on, whether it's 3 or 4. It's not bad. Post multiple times a day. I had to do it yesterday for a webinar that we had going on with Adiram because I was live tweeting it. But as
Mhm.
long as you're not flooding it constantly, you're fine. But
Yeah.
because sometimes it just happens. Main thing I recommend people do is instead of focusing on posting 4 or 5 times a day, post the 1 or 2 times and then take that energy into engaging with people
No, I
because
agree.
your efforts are going to be much more fruitful from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with you. The engagement's more important than how many posts and the quality of the posts. You're better off doing 2 real good posts than 5 so-so posts a day. And then engage with people about their posts or what they're doing and be part of the community, right? That's the social and social media.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other good
A big
tips?
thing is I try to block out time daily to just engage,
Yep.
for 2 hours on different platforms. I've seen people say, "Hey, I engage for 5 minutes." That's not nearly enough to what you need to be doing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
To me, the number one thing, if anyone takes anything out of this podcast, is engage, 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 because that's
Yep.
king.
I would agree with you. Hey Zach, thanks for talking about social. I appreciate it. And if somebody wants to talk to you more, how is the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I am on Twitter. I'm actually trying to grow my Twitter a little bit. So it's Zachary Mimbs B, and
Hmm.
I'm also on LinkedIn. So
Yeah,
let me grab. Sorry, I should have already.
it's okay.
My name on LinkedIn is Zachary Mims. LinkedIn doesn't have handles the way everybody else does. But those are my two main platforms that I'm on. So I share tips almost daily. I haven't as much lately for the past week because I've been a little bit busy with Black Friday, which I love doing. But
Yeah, thanks so much. You have a wonderful day, my friend. Be well.
absolutely. Have a great day, Rob.
You too. Thank you very much for listening to the STM show. The STM show is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, your digital concierge. For all your digital marketing needs, especially WordPress security, jump on over to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and let's help you put the pieces together and make your business succeed in the marketing realm. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. A very special thank you to Zachary for joining me on this edition of the SDM show. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I love you. I miss you very much. And thanks for all the inspiration over the years and your caring, your understanding, and helping me grow as an individual. Thank you, Dad.